Everybody, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We had a full house today. We have a special guest with us, Dave Reinitz. A hilarious comedian, Dave Reinitz, is here, along with the miserable liberal and Ron Placone. How y'all doing?
Hey,
Good,
Jimmy.
Yeehaw.
Hello.
Hee-haw. All right. Look, Ron, everybody's enjoying Ron's new haircut. The banking, I would never cut my hair that short because I'm losing my hair, and I want to hang on to as much of it as I can. So guess what? Turns out the bankers still control everything and everybody. And it didn't used to always be this way. You know, banking used to be a boring profession, like it's supposed to be. From like 1945 to, I don't know, the mid-70s or so. There's no bank failures. There's no nothing. Economy was very boring. No big crashes. And then, of course, you know what happened when they deregulated Wall Street and repealed Glass-Steagall. And so we're still living in that. There's been a recovery for the 1% in the banks, but not the people. Okay, so you know that because you are the people. So Vox has this article. The banking industry is spending big on red state Democrats in 2018. In 2016, the banks gave most to Marco Rubio and Pat Toomey. This year, it's Jon Tester and Heidi Heitkamp. So this is falling under the problem of we're going to reform the Democratic Party. We're going to reform the Democratic Party, except we need some people who are completely bought and paid for so we can have a majority, which doesn't help. And then you got people like Jon Tester and Heidi Heitkamp going along with Republican legislation. Well, the Democrats all just went along with the military budget. They all just went along. It's just horrible. But anyway, let's get into this article a little bit, and then I'll throw it to my panel. Democratic Senators Jon Tester of Montana and Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, and Claire McCaskill of Missouri have seen a boost in support from the commercial banking sector as the 2018 midterms approach. They've collectively brought in more than $800,000 in donation this election cycle, and along with Republican Senator Dean Heller from Montana, are the top recipients of commercial banking money. Usually that's Chucky the Shoe. And it's not just money that they're getting. Banks are supporting them in other ways. The Credit Union National Association, a credit union lobbying group, is weighing digital ads and direct mailing efforts to support them. And the American Bankers Association Banking Trade Group is running ads for Tester in Montana. Precisely why the banks have, and this is when Vox gets cute. This is what I love. Watch this. Vox says, precisely why the banks have taken such an interest in this group of senators is not entirely clear.
What could it possibly be?
I think it's because they like Jon Tester's haircut. That's what it is. However, they are among the same senators who voted for and helped craft a banking deregulation bill earlier this year. Now, they knew that was funny when they wrote that.
It's just a coincidence.
They do. We don't really know. Oh, by the way, those guys were the deregulators. Coinky dink. A little bit more to this. The Economic Growth Regulatory Relief and Consumer Protections Act is the biggest rewrite of the Dodd-Frank financial reform since that legislation was signed in 2010. So that's the economic growth. So remember we told you that a bunch of Senate Democrats, with the blessing of Chuck Schumer, joined the Republicans in deregulating Wall Street again. So that was the bill. And Trey Hawkins, the Deputy Chief Advocacy Officer for Political Action at CUNA, told me that the group also intends to pay for digital ads and direct mail campaigns targeted at credit union members to educate them on the issues for certain candidates, including likely some of the red state Democrats mentioned. So not only do they give money to these people, but then they do things for them like this, like, oh, we're going to fund a mailer from the bankers, telling everybody what a good job Jon Tester's doing. All of our research shows that it's very impactful in helping convert supporters for the candidate. They're talking about the direct mail stuff. Americans for Prosperity, a group funded by billionaire GOP donors David Koch and Charles Koch, ran an ad after the bill was passed thanking Heitkamp for her vote. You're a Democrat, and the Koch brothers just ran a commercial thanking you. The American Bankers Association is running ads supporting Tester in Montana. Its bank PAC has donated the maximum $10,000 to multiple vulnerable Democrats, including Donnelly, Tester, McCaskill, and Joe Manchin. In order for Democrats to win an election in a state that Trump won by 20 points, Democrats must win a certain share of Trump voters. Klein said, a way in could be a mailer from the Community Banking Association or a small bank vouching for a senator in a commercial. So you see what they're doing? Hey, you played ball with us. We'll tell some Trump voters that you're a good right-winger. One of the biggest changes the banking bill this year made. So that bill that Jon Tester. First of all, are any of you surprised by this at all? Has any of this surprised any of you?
No.
No. Okay, good.
Not in the slightest.
Me neither, right? It's just like, okay.
I mean, in Montana, they're betting on both sides of the election.
Yes.
They're
Right.
giving it to both. So it's clear. It's just so blatant.
Yeah, it is blatant.
Yeah. They don't bother to hide it anymore. I mean, they're thanking her. They're not sending a card.
They're
saying
thanking
thank
her
you
with
for
the
the vote.
they
They're
didn't do
putting
it-
it on television.
That's what I'm thinking. The same. Well, this is what Chris
And
Hedges.
yes, that goes right back to what Chris Hedges says
This is right-
about they're doing it right in view for
Yes.
everybody
He says-
to see.
They're not
Eventually,
nervous.
it's going to be an open letter. They're just going to publish it on. Thank you. That was great.
Yes, Chris Hedges makes the point that they're so brazen, the neoliberals, the plutocrats, that they steal right out in the open.
Well, it goes right back to Obama not prosecuting anybody during the financial crisis.
Not one
Nobody,
person.
Not one person.
Not one person.
Not one
I
person.
think Kamala Harris had a chance to prosecute
Mnuchin?
Steve Mnuchin, and she wasn't able to.
Wasn't able to.
She was sick that day.
I'm sure she was. So let me just tell you what that bank. So they deregulated the Dodd-Frank, and here's what they did, with the help of Heidkamp, McCaskill, and Manchin and Tester. One of the biggest changes the banking bill this year made, lifting the threshold for certain regulatory scrutiny to banks of $250 billion in assets instead of $50 billion in assets. It isn't exactly aimed at tiny rural credit unions. So what this did was there was all these regulations on big banks.
AKA protections.
So there was all these protections, making sure that the banks wouldn't F up again and then screw everybody, and then we'd have to bail them out. So these protections or restrictions on how they could trade, how they could invest, and what they could do with their money, these restrictions applied to any bank that was worth more than $50 billion. So this new legislation said we're going to lift that all the way up to $250 billion. So if you're a bank, so this was under the guise of we're helping small community banks, although $250 billion, that means that every bank in the country will not be regulated except for 11 banks. Every other bank won't have to follow those regulations. That's what Tester voted for, Heidkamp, McCaskill, and Manchin. And so they basically got rid of all the regulations except for the top 11 banks. Every other bank in the country, entire country, has a balance of $250 billion or less. So they basically just got rid of the regulations again. And so now they're rewarding them. And they did it under the guise of we're helping small to mid-level banks. But you could see they're not. $250 billion puts you at the 12th largest bank in the country. So that's what they're talking about. The idea that there's the big, so we'll skip that. So here's what Elizabeth Warren said about the banking regulations that they just repealed. Here's what she said about
It's
that
like
bill.
clockwork. Things get better and the economy's looking good and the lobbyists flood Congress to say, deregulate, turn these guys loose. And then, like clockwork, the risk starts to build up, things explode, and who's left holding the bag? The American tax.
The American taxpayer is left holding the bag. So here, you want to see a commercial? The commercial that they're running
yeah.
for.
Oh, yeah.
Here's one of the banks that are running a commercial for him.
Well,
Here
he
we go.
looks like a bank.
I run a community bank in the Flathead Valley.
in the heart of Billings and Hardin.
In Jordan, the best stop on Highway 200.
Here in Montana, local banks build local communities.
Growing small businesses from scratch.
Backing ranchers, farmers, and families.
That's why Senator Tester put politics aside
And voted to cut the red tape.
Ending the needless regulations and bureaucracy that were hurting Montana banks. That's leadership.
That's courage.
That's Jon Tester.
American Bankers Association is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So the bankers are putting out a commercial thanking Jon Tester.
I got to tell you, Jimmy, anytime I see a banker endorse somebody, I think they've got my vote.
They've got my vote. They're on the side of
I
the
always
world.
look for moral guidance from a banker.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why are they stopping at just these things for, you see all these voter guides from different groups like the Democrat Socialists for America or the Green Party. And every time that happens, I'm just like, what's Wells Fargo thinking? I'm so bummed out right now.
So there you have it. That's the problem. I mean, to me, the bigger problem is, this is what happens when you have two parties. So now you have to have guys like Jon Tester in your party who's firmly in the pocket of the banks, just deregulated Wall Street again. There's going to be another crash. This is horrible.
And it's the same failed Democratic platform of
Yeah.
let's go get Republican votes.
Yes.
Yes, let's not fire up people that care. Let's try to get, and it was right in the Vox article about we're going to need to change Trump voters' minds.
Yeah.
No, you need to get people that didn't vote to get off their ass and have an inspirational message.
Dave, that is such a great point. You are correct. Half the country didn't vote in the 2016 election. How about you give them so they go, we have to go after Trump voters, so we have to do this bank stuff. You think Trump voters want banks fucking deregulated?
Right.
Do you think the Trump voters want the banks to be bailed out again? No, they were against the first TARP.
Right, but they like the word regulation, right?
Right.
Rolling back a regulation.
Right.
That means I'm going to be freer.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
the bank can fuck me over. I'll be freer.
So do you want to go after Trump voters, Jon Tester? Maybe you promise them something that Democrats also agree with, like, I don't know, Medicare for all. Because that's now the majority of Republicans agree with Medicare for all. Maybe you promise to end the wars and invest that money back here because the right and the left also agree. Trump voters also agree with that. A lot of Trump voters said they voted for him because he said he was going to be a non-interventionist. So maybe that's how you get them. No, how about you promise to get rid of all those bad trade deals and you'll be against TPP and you'll be against NAFTA or you'll try to repeal it. How about that's another way to get Trump voters? So they're pretending we got to do this horrible stuff. No, there's lots of okay stuff you can do that excites people to come out to vote for you, exactly what Dave said. Why don't you have a platform or a program or some ideas that actually excite people, that get voters excited, instead of a commercial where you're sucking off all the bankers? Jesus.
And this is in the midst that, what is it, Jimmy? Is it 60% of Americans right now are $500 away from catastrophe?
63% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. 76% of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 29 million Americans still don't have health care. The biggest cause of bankruptcies is health-related needs, and most of the people who go bankrupt have health insurance. 50% of all wage earners earn less than $30,000 in America. This is the country, the richest country in the world, and this is the system that the bankers set up, and Jon Tester's proud to help them screw you even harder.
And, a progressive platform, getting back to you were saying, how about having a platform that actually inspires people? A progressive platform appeals to a lot of young people, and a state that's actually full of a bunch of college towns and not a whole lot else? Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah, how about you promise them free college? How about you turn
banks back into utilities? Like you were talking about, that they were boring because they were run like utilities. right? And it was just slow process. They made a small margin, which was enough money because they were handling so much cash, and everybody was cool. Everybody understood that the bankers were going to make more money than everybody else, but they weren't bleeding everybody.
Right.
And then with the advent of credit cards, and that's the other thing that happened in the 70s, the credit cards came out. And so through the recessions of the 70s and the Reagan boom, as they call it, a lot of that was funded because people suddenly had the ability to borrow money. So despite the fact that wages were falling, your spending was the same because you could just borrow the dough.
Right.
And that's what's happened, when they did quantitative easing and they put all the money in the system, they pumped the economy up, but people's wages haven't gone up. But their debt continues to go up.
That is correct. There's $1 trillion in student loan debt.
Yeah.
There's $1 trillion in credit card debt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debt in this country. That is correct. And when it crashes again, we'll just bail out the banks again, and we'll kick some people out of their houses and give those houses back to the banks, and then they can resell them, and they'll be twice as rich as they are because this recovery did not help anybody except the 1%. This recovery is not happening.
And I'd just like to know, what is exactly the litmus test for showing that you're a Democrat?
Well, this is that's a great
Isn't
question.
Isn't it a blue shirt and a flag in your lapel? Is that the way?
Any blue just won't do. Is that what we're saying here? Any blue just won't do. What the? Come on, this is awful.
Well, I know we saw I saw Nina Turner, I saw Ocasio-Cortez say any blue just won't do, and then Ocasio went ahead and said we got to make sure Andrew Cuomo wins. If that isn't any blue will do, I don't know. And that's what this is too.
Well, did she say Governor Cuomo, or she said the governor?
The governor. I'm hoping that people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be the antidote to guys like Jon Tester. That's what I'm hoping. We'll stand up to those people and call them out. And that's the problem with having a two-party system. Y'all have to be on the same side. So you're on the side with a guy who's actively working against people. You see Andrew Gillum out there tweeting out a video with Cory Booker, corporate tool extraordinaire, in bed with Betsy DeVos. So this is the problem. And, there's nobody who wants a progressive takeover of our government more than me. And if it was happening, I would certainly be cheering it on. It is not happening. This is your future. This is the future. Nancy Pelosi has already said she's going to do PAYGO. Even if the Democrats take over the Congress again, she's doing PAYGO, which means no progressive legislation. So there you go.
I got to tell you, Jimmy, seeing that ad with one banker after another
Say
banker
Jon Tester
endorse him, and I just think, well, who in Montana does that appeal to?
I know. So they're trying to make it out like it's the small bankers, the small itty bitty bankers are the ones who really love him. But again, the legislation that he helped pass was for banks $250 billion in assets and less. So that's every bank in the country except for 11 of them, literally, except for 11. So it's not just about small community banks. It's amazing. And this is did Chuck Schumer call him out for this? No. Chuck Schumer's the leader in the Senate. He said, okay, go ahead. He said it's cool. He said it's so cool for all those people to do that. He said it's cool. He just fast-tracked Trump's judges. Good luck, progressives, trying to take over the Democratic Party. My heart is with you. My head is wishing you would do something else. Please make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are subscribed, there's a good chance you're not. So please check. It only takes a second. And then click that bell. And that's how you know you'll get a notice every time we drop a video. They still won't notify you every time we drop a video, but that's the best we can do. Plus, if you like the show, you want to support it, please become a patron. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And come see a live show. Go to JimmyDoreComedy.com for our live schedule.